Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Growth Show. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today I have a special guest, Muhammad Ali Rafai, and he is a highly respected internist and psychiatrist after his experience, though with a government prosecution and being found not guilty. He's currently mending his relationship with his family and building his business back to glory. And he just released his book, Doctor Not Guilty. Muhammad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I am delighted to be talking to your audience about my experience and uh, on the back to mending relationship with family.
Yeah, for sure. I think as we got talking and we're discussing this potential podcast, what really stuck out to me is how you and your wife have weathered this ordeal. But let's talk about the ordeal. Let's talk about how you got here, how you got in this situation, a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of jump right into your story.
Sure, sure. Thank you for having me and allowing me this opportunity to talk to your audience. So, by background, my family is originally from Syria. We're from Aleppo, Syria, which is one of the oldest continuously inhabited city in history. Aleppo is in the northern part of Syria. I am a first generation immigrant, and I completed my medical training at the University of Virginia and trained in internal medicine and psychiatry in the late 90s. I also did significant research in psychiatry. I was actually at the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland for 3 years prior to relocating to Pennsylvania around 2006, and I've been in Pennsylvania now almost for 20 years. I have been married to my better half, Dr. Duha Sabuni, who's an obstetrician and gynecologist for close now to 24 years. We have three beautiful children. Nader is our oldest, Nabil is the middle one, and Zaid is the youngest. Nader is 22, Nabil is 20, and Zaid is 12. And I met my wife while I was visiting in Syria in 2002. And basically, we hit it off immediately. And she was still my sister's best friend. We had met in the year 2000 and then met again in 2001. And we were actually planning to get married in 2001. And unfortunately, 9/11 happened and put everything on hold. But we ultimately got married in August 2002, and almost 24 years now since we've been married. She moved here to the United States from Syria, and she's a tough one. And she actually in 2007 started her residency in obstetrics and gynecology, and she commuted for 4 years. She commuted an hour and a half each way from Pennsylvania to where she did her residency at St. Joseph Hospital in Paterson, New Jersey. So we started our marriage with a very strong bond and relationship, and we grew together stronger because during that 4 years she was busy. She was gone 120 hours a week. So most of the time she would come home and just rest and basically see us and see the kids. It was myself and my two kids. And I was working full time as an attending psychiatrist at a local hospital, and she was doing her residency full time. And we had some help, but very little family help. But that made our marriage much stronger. That cemented our relationship and prepared us, like Noah built the ark for the great flood that came in 2022. I grew my practice. I started my practice, Blue Mountain Psychiatry, in 2012. And I was on the cutting edge of psychiatry. I did telemedicine, telehealth when nobody was doing telehealth. I had started doing telehealth in 2006. And when I built my practice, I expanded to doing telehealth services in nursing homes, which is what got me into trouble with the government, who was just looking for a fall guy after COVID and after telehealth exploded. Everybody was doing telehealth. They needed a fall person to teach a lesson that basically that you need to do telehealth services very cautiously. But I had done that very cautiously, and unfortunately, I became the target of the government. And in 2022, I was criminally indicted by the United States government, and it was a devastating experience. The press releases were out there. Lehigh Valley psychiatrists stole from Medicare, and that was very devastating for myself as a pillar of the community, as a psychiatrist, as a practicing psychiatrist. It was devastating for myself as a spiritual and religious person. I'm Muslim. I believe in God, and I believe in doing the right thing. I've never stolen anything in my life, and for the government of the United States to put out a press release that you stole from Medicare, that was devastating. It's a big blow to my personality, is a big blow to my faith, but my faith in God is strong. And it was a big blow to my relationship with my family because in the press release they said if convicted, he could spend 40 years in jail. And at that time I was 50, and that meant that basically I that's it. That would be the end of my life. I had three beautiful kids that were growing and they were in college, and my beautiful wife, and that was almost 2 years of hell. And
Can't
I
imagine.
decided I decided that I wanted to go to trial. I decided that I'm going to keep my faith in God and that I was going to be exonerated. And
Hmm.
I went to trial, and through divine providence and not just divine providence, divine intervention and divine redirection, things that happened during the trial. The jury saw what happened and came back in 2 hours and found me not guilty on all charges. And I'm going to tell that story. I'm going to have a book coming out, Doctor Not Guilty, and I'm going to be telling that story of what happened to me and how I was exonerated, and to tell people how to keep faith even in the standing for the Goliath of the United States government. But if
Hmm.
you believe in the Lord, you're going to be saved.
I really appreciate that message. And there have been times where, you know, probably all of us have been falsely accused of something at some point in our life. But this takes it to a whole new level where, you've got a life sentence essentially on your hands. It would strip you away from, providing for your family and spending time rest of your life with them. What a horrible ordeal. And I'm so happy you're here to talk about it. As a free man, you went through a lot. I really want to, discuss because I know you help a lot of couples and you help individuals with their relationships and with, their mental health. Let's talk about, how you and your wife have been able to weather this storm
Mhm.
together, and some strengths based recommendations on how couples can get to this point. You guys have really done an amazing job together, and I know there are a lot of couples who couldn't withstand
Mhm.
what's happened because their marriage maybe isn't built on God and really important principles that we'll be able to discuss. But yeah, let's dive into that. How did you guys survive this?
I mean, it was a lot of dark days. I mean, I don't want to give the impression that it was all rosy and that we were just hugging and saying that this is gonna go well. We're both very spiritual and we have a strong belief in God. It was as I said, it was the building of the foundation of the relationship. We were very compatible in terms of our families. So just going back to the roots, because it's a foundation. It's a tree that if you're going to build a building that's going to withstand a hurricane, basically you have to start with a very strong foundation. So our compatibility, the fact that we were compatible, we actually had a good relationship when we were engaged. We were engaged for about a year and a half, and we got to know each other and decided whether we were a good couple. So this wasn't. I know people from the Middle East and other parts of the world that have arranged marriages. So this was like I would call this semi-arranged, but it was still with us getting to know each other and having a chance to say no, no, that's not a good fit, or we're a good fit. So I think starting with that, that was step one in terms of our relationship. I knew she wanted to do residency. I was supportive of that 100%. She knew my career and the things that I was going to do. And we had a very positive relationship from the beginning. We understood each other. We understood our needs and wants, and often prayed together. So that was a very strong relationship between us. And despite the fact that I'm somebody from the Middle East, I participated in raising the kids. So after we got married for about 4 years, she was at home raising the kids. But then for about 4 years, where she was doing her residency, she was completely gone. I was almost as if I was a single dad, and she would come in after she finishes work. She would come in and she would spend maybe half an hour with us, and then she goes to sleep and then wakes up and repeat again for about 4 years. But we survived that. I think it made us stronger as a couple because we learned how to weather difficult situations. So this 2 years where I was under indictment and was facing jail was very similar and reminiscent to that time where I was almost a single dad with two kids, ages 4 and 2, our oldest now. And basically, we raised those kids together for about 4 years prior to her finishing her residency. But I think that laid the foundation for a very positive relationship. Um, we learned how to carve time to spend together and to keep that strong relationship together. So even if we had a short amount of time to be together, but we learned how to keep that relationship alive with prayer and along with trying to understand each other and trying to continue our connection together. And so when she finished her residency, that was our opportunity to continue to cement our relationship. But as with every relationship, that I mean, we've had struggles with our relationship. We had ups and downs, and we had difficulties, but communication is very, very important. I think that was something that kept us together, is that we had open communication always. And the fact that we maintain that communication through our relationship with God.
Yeah, you mentioned some really important things there. The continual connection. I know a lot of researchers call these traditions, right? Or making time for each other throughout the day, or connecting when you get home from work. Like, there's a lot of things that look like connection. What would be something that you have seen works with couples, maybe even in your own marriage, that would be an example of making that connection? What does that look like?
So just a practical tip. So I mean, myself and my wife, we are too busy doctors, too busy professionals, but we carve at least 3 hours every week where we say we have to go out on a date to keep our relationship alive. We have to devote time no matter what's going on, no matter what demands from the kids or anything. This is mom and dad's date. We go out, we have fun, we spend these 3 hours together, kind of uninterrupted. We actually turn off our phones. There's no phone, so it's just me and her, and we go out. We go out to dinner, and we walk around town. We spend a nice 3 hours together to kind of continue that relationship because unless you have that, unless you do a continuation of a relationship, when the hurricane comes, there's not going to be any foundation for you to lean on or lean on each other in terms of kind of facing the calamities that are coming.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time with my clients, like make connection consistent, have these traditions, have these daily routines. Very early on, my wife and I were in a marriage prep class, and which most people just they don't do. We focus on the wedding and not the preparation of the
Sure.
actual union. And but I remember his advice. His advice to us was very clear. Husbands, when you come home, greet your wife, seek her out. Wives, when you return, if you're gone from the home, throughout the day, whatever, and your husband is there, like seek each other out. Make sure you create that connection.
Mhm.
This was never really, I guess it was important just because it was, something we were told, but, it never really hit me until my father passed away very suddenly. And the last thing that you remember when somebody dies really quick, or maybe even it's been a prolonged period of time, but a really sudden death, you remember, what was the last thing I said? What's the last thing we did? How did I connect? And that's a father-son relationship. But I think about my wife sometimes, like, man, what was the last thing I said? What was the last thing we did? And man, I hope it's, connecting. But then when you come home from a day and you're stressed, or you guys are both working, and you're both working there, and you're both needing to make that connection a priority. I love that. That's awesome. The second piece you talked about that I want to highlight is connection with God. How has your connection with God helped your union?
Um, so we both have very spiritual families. I mean, I wouldn't call us very strictly religious, but very spiritual. We do our prayers, we do our daily prayers, and we fast, and we went to pilgrimage together. So in 2015, myself and my wife, we went to pilgrimage to Mecca, which is one of the pillars of Islam, my religion. Um, we also look up to our parents. So my mom and dad, my dad is 85, turning 86. My mom is 80, and they've been married for almost 60 years. And Her mom and dad, they're advanced in age. Her dad is 70, her mom is 65, and they've been almost married now for 50 years. And so basically, it's looking up to the parents, and sometimes I remember that when she makes comments, when every couple has sometimes when they get upset at each other, there's a tit and tat, even as good as the relationship is. And she would remind me, it's like, well, look at your parents and look at my parents. They just snip at each other all day, and they still live together. And we laugh at it because, I mean, we may get mad at each other, but then it's gone in an hour, and we settle. And so and she gives me the example about my family. Well, look, your mom and dad, they just all the time at each other all day long. And look at my parents. They're just upset at each other all the time. But then they stayed together, and they're happy, and they continue. And you have to learn how to um, put up with each other, because and unfortunately, in this day and age, nobody puts up with anybody or with anything anymore, and just everybody just abandons ship. very quickly. Imagine if Noah had abandoned the ark, we would not be here.
No, and I I agree. Like, so what I found in a lot of the research out there is that couples that had shared values did way better in their relationship, and individually they were happier. It wasn't just that they were giving all to the relationship and they left their individual identity, but they also had great, psychological happiness, and stronger financial stability, because they had shared values. And the top shared value was shared religion, not necessarily of the same religion. It
Sure,
wasn't
sure.
just like, hey, yes, check the box, Catholic, Lutheran, whatever. No, it was that they had shared religious values. The second only to that was parenting, like how well they thought they did parenting together,
Mhm.
which that's a great a segue to talk about kids and challenges and life. But I want to stick to this for just a second and really focus in on it's not just the doing. It's not just going to the church. It's not just doing the outside of the home things. It really is what you believe, how you believe it. And obviously, my audience is faith based, and a lot of Christian dads are out there. And while we're talking, and we don't share the exact same religion. This isn't a religious podcast, but essentially we can understand that if we share those religious values with each other,
Sure.
with our spouse, that is going to create a really strong bond. And I believe that God loves everyone and he wants us to be successful in our marriage. So let's talk about, because you mentioned this before, you talked about, you and your wife struggling through this really, really hard time. Not Most of us aren't going to be indicted by the government, but there are going to be challenges in our marriage. Period. End of story. Exclamation point. And there are a lot of challenges. I write about it in my book about financial struggles, burnout at work, stress, children, on and on. What, without getting into, let's say, the details of various challenges, because they're out there. If you want to elaborate, that's fine. But what would you say to couples who are facing a challenge right now? They're going through something hard. Um, what advice would you give to them to help them stay the path, to stay strong, and to be able to make it through?
I think maintaining faith is one of the most important things. Faith in God that things are going to be okay. Um, Funny that you talked about financial challenges. So interestingly, after even after the indictment and after I went to trial, um, there were still some financial challenges, and the defense of the charges cost a lot of money, and the government is not forgiving either. So basically, after the trial, um, the government in its wisdom decided to take a large amount of money out of our accounts, um, lawfully or unlawfully. We ultimately gained it back, but that was so I was done with trial, and then all of a sudden we lose a large amount of money, whether it was appropriate or inappropriate. But basically, so it was somebody who was trying to recover and get up, and they're hit on the head again. Um, but and that was I felt that was even a harder struggle than the first one, basically because we had just were trying to mend that relationship, and then it's like you're trying to get up again and you get hit on the head again, and you're down again. But our faith in the fact that money is a transitional object. We're not gonna take it with us, and we reminded ourselves with when we went to pilgrimage to Mecca, and were standing on the wall and praying to God. And when we go to pilgrimage, the men are wearing just white garbs, basically similar to what you get buried in, just to remind you that basically when you die, there's no pockets that you take money in. Basically, you're just you're going to go out of this world with nothing. You came with nothing, and you're going to go out of this world with nothing, and that money is replaceable, and that we were both doctors, and we were going to be able to replace it. But we stood together, and we kept our faith together, and that financial problem actually resolved itself very nicely in our favor. Even though we got upset, and that was another test of our marriage, and the financial problem got resolved very nicely in our favor.
The fact that you're turning toward each other. Dr. Gottman talks a lot about this. I don't know if you're familiar with John Gottman's work. Yeah, great guy, and he's a Jew, and he's very outspoken about his religious beliefs, but he's also very open to all sorts of couples and their belief systems. And what I've loved about his research is he's a researcher's researcher. Like, he understands his craft, and he is well known in the research world. But most people know John Gray, who published
Yes.
the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, not
Yes.
research based at all, and quite honestly has done some damage to relationships. But the other John Gottman,
Yes.
he is a fantastic researcher. He has a love lab up in Washington where he brings couples in and examines their relationship. And what he found is when couples were saddled with some sort of stressor, he would look at their heart rate, how fidgety they were in their seats, and all sorts of tests of physical and emotional trauma there. And he found that when couples were dealing with a challenge, the ones that physically, emotionally, verbally turned toward each other to try and gain strength from each other were able to make it through. But the ones who blamed each other and turned away physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually from their spouse, he could predict that they would end in divorce 97% of the time. It was quite fascinating. So what I'm hearing from you is that, yeah, you guys, you leaned on each other and you made it through. I know that, I coach couples all the time about their money differences and helping them get on the same page. My wife and I have been through earlier on in our marriage, some financial difficulties that almost took our home, and we were in a really, really tough time. I remember just being able to lean on her and her on me for a little bit till we made it through. And quite honestly, looking back, so many people, 2009, 2010, were upside down in their home, and just struggled with the economy. And we made it out better than before. And quite honestly, as Dave Ramsey says all the time, better than I deserve.
Sure. Yes.
um, we learned a lot, but I appreciate that advice. Obviously your book, let's talk a little bit about your book. Your book details this story of how you fought this David, and Goliath type story
Yes.
of you
Muhammad
fighting the
Ali and
government.
Goliath.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's what I figure, man. Like, we've been talking about how you and your wife have been great to stand together, and how difficult this was. But talk to us a little bit about the book and what else we can expect to see or hear, as we read through that, about the stories of faith and resilience.
So one of the stories that I tell in the book, and every time I recall the story, I just um, don't know how my family were able to go through this. So I learned in June 2022. I'd learned that there was an investigation through my lawyer, and that the government had decided to indict me. The indictment didn't come in until November, but they had made the decision that there was going to be an indictment, and that I was going to be facing criminal charges. And I had to sit down my kids, my three boys. Um, our oldest at that time was in his second year of college. The middle child was just finishing high school, and the youngest was 10. So imagine having to sit down with your three kids and your wife and tell them, listen, Dad may go away for the rest of his life, and imagine just the relationship with your kids, how they're crying, how they're dealing with this. That they hurt. I mean, it's one thing for children to lose their parents abruptly, but it's another thing for them to suffer and be told that daddy may go away, and those are usually more difficult than just kind of the sudden death. But basically, we sat down together, we prayed together. My entire family, we prayed together, and they did okay with that news. So that was the 30th of June, 2022, and the next few days was going to be the 4th of July weekend. Um, and on Monday was actually the 4th of July, 2022. 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings in my house, and I've heard from my attorney. The government has it for you. They're gonna send people after you. They're gonna send police officers and dogs and helicopters and SWAT teams just to get you when this is gonna come down. And so I answer the phone. The phone rings with very loudly, and everybody in the house wakes up. They're thinking that they're coming for their dad. And so I pick up the phone, and on the phone, a person says, "Well, is this Dr. Rafai?" And I said, "Yes, this is Dr. Rafai." He says, "This is Lieutenant Nichols from the Easton Police Department SWAT team." And I said, "Oh my Lord, they are coming for us. That's it. This is it. This is it." And so I said, "Lieutenant,
Wow.
Lieutenant, we have no weapons at home. We are unarmed. We're going to come out. I have my children here. We have no weapons. We are unarmed, and we're going to come out." And the lieutenant answered back and said, "No, no, Dr. Rafai, no, no, there's nothing going on. We need you. There's one of your patients is having a psychiatric emergency, and he's hauled up in his apartment. He's a veteran, and they're saying there's a lot of weapons, and somebody said he wanted to commit suicide, and we've surrounded his apartments, and we've cordoned off several city blocks, and everybody's sheltering in place. And he said he's not coming back out until he talks to Dr. Rafai. So would you talk to him?"
Oh, wow.
So I am thinking, okay, the government is coming after me. They sent the SWAT team to arrest Dr. Rafai, and the message from the Lord is, no, no, they need you.
Hmm.
So from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning, I talked to this veteran who's my patient. His first name is Chris. And ultimately, after 2 hours, this is 2 hours, um, Monday, July 4th, 2022. Between 2 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning, I talked to Chris. Even though in my heart I was being indicted, I was going to jail, I talked to him as if my life depended on it. And I ultimately convinced him to come out without killing himself, without shooting himself, without shooting anybody else. And Chris was not charged with any crime from the police. They dealt with it as a mental health emergency. And he actually ended up being hospitalized for a few weeks, and he recovered nicely. And he actually established a veteran support group. Now, fast forward to my trial in May of 2024. Unbeknownst to me, my attorney, through my family, had asked Chris to come and testify on my behalf as a character witness to the jury. And to my surprise, Chris showed up in his military uniform, and testified for about 30 minutes. And I had forgotten. He told the jury the details of what we talked about that morning between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. He told them everything. He says, I didn't know that this doctor, when he was talking to me, he was facing legal problems and he was going to go to jail. But he talked to me. He saved my life. We prayed together. And at the end of his testimony, he looked at the jury and he told them, "Release him, release him." And he started yelling, and by God's grace, release him. And so the jury came back in 2 hours and found me not guilty. So that story, it's in my book, but I keep it there to kind of just how providence, just the Lord plays in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
And my family put up with this, put up, and we came out stronger.
Yeah. And, this is a case about resilience, a case of trusting in God, a case in relying on each other as spouses, and a case of family that loves you and supports you. And I'm sure they've been through some really hard things. I can't imagine myself, but to receive that phone call and thinking it's for you, and to then go help someone else in need, I can't think of a more, quite honestly, godlike thing to do. So, Mohammed, this has been a pleasure, to get to know you, to hear your stories, to hear how you can help individuals, and how you have been a help, and how God has helped you, and how your family surrounded you and supported you. I love these concepts. We could talk about them ad nauseum, but I hope people will go and read your book. Where can they find it? How can they get a hold of a copy of your book?
The book is on Amazon, Doctor Not Guilty. It is the only book that's ever been published with the title Doctor Not Guilty. So look
Love
it
it.
up on Amazon. It's available for purchase.
So go get your copy of Doctor Not Guilty. I think there's a lot of inspiration that we all can gain from your story, from what you do. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for helping those in need. Thank you for standing for true principles. And it's a pleasure to be able to interview you on our show. Anything that you want to leave with listeners, any last tidbits or thoughts, or ideas that you feel inspired to do so?
People should never lose hope. God is great. God is gonna save us, and people should always keep the faith. I actually had asked. I talked to my dad early on today, and I said I'm gonna do this podcast, and what should I give people, kind of the message of hope? And he said, just remember, we taught you. There's a very famous Judeo-Christian, even Islamic story of a farmer, and this farmer is planting plants, and Judgment Day happens. Judgment Day happens, and he has a plant in his hand, ready to plant it, and the Lord tells him to plant it, even though it's Judgment Day, everything is going to end,
Right.
but he plants that plant. So never lose hope. Even Judgment
Yeah.
Day is happening. You plant that plant because God is great, and He's going to save us.
I appreciate this. Thank you for being on the show. Because if you've loved this as much as I have, please check out his book, Doctor Not Guilty. Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And remember, until we have a perfect world, right? We're all struggling. We all have challenges. We all have these things in our lives and in our marriage, and to stay vigilant, to stay active and proactive in our marriage. Find those traditions, those ways of connecting, the ways of connecting to God. And like Muhammad was talking about, keep the faith, hang in there. And until next time, remember to live life on purpose.